talk about getting to the root cause of anxiety or burnout. My name's Rochelle Walsh. I've been a complex trauma therapist for over 25 years, and I specialize in helping women through neuroscience-based strategies to rewire their nervous system for a state of calm. So I want to talk about the underlying cause of overwhelm, burnout, anxiety, because I really think there's a lot of misinformation out there about things that we can do. There's a lot of focus on treating symptoms and simply coping with life. And that is not actually fixing the problem. So do we want coping strategies on board? Of course. It's nice to have some things that we can reach for in our tool bag that help us to get out of a state of overwhelm, or, wow, I was able to turn the music on and certain music on and do a certain meditation, listen to my Calm app or whatever, and relax after a hard day. But you know what? If the next day is just as hard and the next day is just as hard, and the accumulation of the stress continues to build while you get busier and busier using coping strategies like, again, using a meditation app or battling health symptoms or going to get a massage or taking a vacation. And a lot of times, what our brain instantly does is say, oh my gosh, there's an alarm. That's what stress is, right? Or overwhelm, there's an alarm. The body's been in fight or flight. And so the brain is saying, where's the problem? Where's the problem? Where's the problem? It's trying to identify the threat. So, I'm working too much, or it's my relationship with this person, or it's because I have these gut issues from these food sensitivities. And so the brain is on the search for what is it that's causing this internal stress response to go on. And so then we get busy with coping strategies. So some people might be using coping strategies, like I said, the Calm app. Maybe they're doing things to constantly detox stress. And these aren't bad things, but, doing things like trying to use somatic exercises or yoga poses to relieve stress from the body, or going to get massages or, adjustments, or all of the things, or treating health symptoms, cleaning up their diet, cutting out the caffeine, cutting out the sugar. Again, not bad things, but a lot of times people will get frustrated. And when I oftentimes see people inside my program, I see them because they're exhausted from battling the health related things that have come from a state of chronic stress. Because when we're in a state of chronic stress, right, the body can't get to that rest and digest. And so it starts attacking. It's inflammation. And so it starts attacking itself. So this might be gut issues. It might be headaches. It might be sleep disturbances. And our gut becomes not able to digest well. So food just kind of sits there and our gut becomes permeable. A lot of not good things happen. I have a lot of respect for that. My husband does this. My husband practices functional medicine and does a lot with autoimmunity. It's not that these symptoms aren't real, but if you combat the health issues, I'm going to go to the doctor, I'm going to clean up my diet, I'm going to, do this pose, and I'm going to use this app, and I'm going to, all of the coping strategies, but you don't fix the underlying cause, the root cause of why. Why are you in this stress response all the time? If you don't fix that, you are going to be a very busy lady combating the many impacts of stress in your life, not to mention how it impacts our relationships, our mood, our purpose, holds us back from things that we want to do in life. So the root cause, getting to the root cause, requires getting into the subconscious. So we can't do that until we can calm, right? Until we can get to a calmer state, calm beta waves, we really can't get into the subconscious. And the subconscious, how we intuitively manage stress, how we intuitively metabolize our emotions, or don't, or stuff them and get busy pleasing, performing, perfecting, all of the things. If we don't get into the subconscious and fix those core drivers to the stress response, that stress response, that fight or flight stays on, inflammation continues, it continues to attack the body, and over time, it disrupts your hormones. People just get really frustrated with having to live their life. In fact, one of my testimonials YouTube, she said she was just busy spending all of her free time, very high-performing woman, but spending all of her free time going to doctors, and finally went to a neurologist so they could rule out Alzheimer's because because she had so much brain fog. So for people who don't want to spend their life in a doctor's office trying to figure out what's going on in their bodies, or is it their hormones? Because yes, when we have high cortisol, it steals from progesterone. It's going to disrupt our hormones. So just because you're perimenopausal doesn't mean that you need to live in a state of chronic stress, but it might mean that you've been carrying the stress so long. Now you're getting to perimenopause. And sometimes even when people get a little bit slower in life, like their kids go away from home and they're not go anymore, but they find that they can't be still, right? They can take more time off work. They have more flexibility. They have more freedom. But I've had people come join my program after being on a 5-day cruise and said I couldn't enjoy any of it because even though my body was at rest, my mind couldn't be. So the mind racing, brain fog, neurological symptoms, physical symptoms, and they're just not living with joy. They're, feel like they're coping with life. So if you don't want to constantly be coping with the impact of chronic stress, it's super important that you get to the root cause of it. There was an article by Harvard I shared in my masterclass, but where the primary predictor of a heightened stress response is lack of emotional regulation. Where does that come from? That comes from childhood or prolonged seasons of trauma. You do not need to go back into the past. And I say this having been a complex trauma therapist for many years, spending many years doing EMDR and all kinds of things, going back into the past and the childhood. But, I have really discovered it's much faster to just deal with what's here now. So we work on the imprint of the nervous system. We work on why is the nervous system, and that doesn't mean going into the story, but how is the nervous system firing in the here and now, and those subconscious, those templates for emotional regulation and beliefs about self, and just kind of the way we approach the world. When we can really get to the root cause, then people can live in a state of parasympathetic nervous system dominance, where they're not constantly coping with life or symptoms, but they're able to really experience life different, experience safety in their body different, experience the way they express and move through emotions differently in a way that they've never had before. And that's when you're really gotten to the root cause. And that's when you can spend your life living life, not trying to just cope with it, live your life enjoying it rather than performing it. So I hope that's helpful. If so, and you want to understand more about the way to help people and more about the brain, I have a masterclass linked below. I'd love for you to give it a listen. Bye.